Hi, welcome to the second installment of our assessment videos. This assessment video is on the academic poster. And we're just going to give you some information about, just kind of go through the task description and the rubrics, as well as giving some pointers in regards to the design and requirements for that.
So, of course, the first thing to note, it is due the end of week 5 on Sunday the 1st of April at 11:55 p.m. And overall it's worth 20% of your grade for this unit.
Tim, I have a quick question for you.
Yes.
Given that this is interactive now. 800 words. So can I go just under 800 words or over 800 words, or like what does 800 words entail?
800 words, it's an 800 word equivalent, because remembering that you also need, as part of your poster, a visual representation. So we're sort of looking for roughly 800 words plus or minus 10% within the poster format.
But should I stress too much about word count, or should I stress more about meeting the criteria in the rubric?
I think the criteria in the rubric is the first protocol for evaluating your poster.
Great, thanks, Tim. Go ahead.
And we have some key points that your tutors might have shared with you, but it's useful to reiterate them now. The poster, you've got the option of just solely doing an electronic version. So perhaps I think many people in the past have used Microsoft PowerPoint, for example. Some people might have access to Publisher. So you can use those to create your poster. And if you do use those that software to create your poster, make sure that you set your, if you're using PowerPoint, set your slide up in an A3 format. And in the shoots in week 4, there will be some information about how you can do that. Otherwise, if you want to do a physical poster, by all means you can, but you will have to either take a photograph of it or have it scanned using the photocopiers at the library and upload the electronic photograph or scan to the Moodle Dropbox as part of your submission. You can also arrange to actually hand the physical copy to your tutor, but at the very least you need an electronic version uploaded to Moodle.
All right, I think I'll talk a little bit about the task, and then
that's a good idea.
All right, sounds good. So what do you need to do? Basically, there's a few components, and you'll see this in the rubric that we're going to show you. And I think the important thing is that if you self-assess yourself with the rubric and make sure that you have, had every single you meet every criteria, that's a really important thing, because sometimes people forget a section, like forget to describe the background of a chosen theorist, and that's points that you'll miss out. So make sure that you do have everything and use the rubric as a self-assessment check. So the first thing is describing the background of your chosen theorist. And this one is actually quite a difficult task, because you really have to summarize the background, and sometimes it's hard to do that in your own words. So we did an activity in week 2 to try to help get you thinking about how to summarize and not just mix a few words around, but how to summarize the background and how to think really about a summary of a theorist or the background and bio of a theorist and pick out the main things that you want to discuss. This section is only worth 15%, so you don't want to spend too much time on this. Then you have to identify the main principles of the learning theory. And this is, what is the learning theory about? And this is basically what makes it distinct from other learning theories. So what are the main principles? Now, it doesn't mean you have to explain everything, but what are the main principles? Again, the focus is to try to do this, less quotes and more just summarize in your own words. And one of the things that we were going to mention is about references. But particularly for the background of your chosen theorist, a lot of people tend to use psychology websites. While you might be able to use one online resource, we really encourage you to go to more academic sources, which would be books in the library. And I think actually books are probably the best, and there's lots of psychology books that you probably find out a lot about these theorists, or educational psychology books. But looking at books I think is the best option. Sometimes articles are a little bit difficult because they're a bit abstract, and they may use a theorist but don't really explain the theorist. where online sources are really not as academic, and so it'd be better to use books.
And as a bit of a helpful hint, should you be walking through the either the Peninsula or the Matheson Library, if you sort of head to the book collection at 370.15, that's 370.15, which is the call number, you'll find a vast array of different educational psychology books, and any one of those will give you information about some of these different learning theories. So that might sort of save you a bit of time to go for a bit of a walk in the book collections at either your library.
So we're just getting a call. The other thing is that you may consider talking with your peers, because one of the things that happens is that there'll be a certain number of books and they're all checked out and then you are left with none. So do make sure to see that you're kind of sharing different books that you might have across your tutorial. So as long as you're not sharing each other's actual writing, more than willing to share your resources. So do talk to each other in that regard. The other thing that you require is providing a visual representation of the theory. Now you can create your own, which is much more difficult, but you can also find one on the internet. And I think, really thinking about why you're choosing one, and also making why you chose that particular one and why you feel, I think, explaining the main principles, referring back to that visual representation is really important, so that's not just some random representation of the theory, but it's not connected to anything that you've written. So make sure you refer back to it in the main principles.
And if you use an image from a web or from a book, make sure that you actually cite where that image came from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in actually every image, unless you've created it, needs to be cited. So do check the APA guide for that. Now, the main part of your poster is analyzing analyze learning through this theory. And basically what that means is, how does this theory help us to understand how one learns? And how might this theory impact on how we learn best? And in practical terms, that means, in this section, we want to know that you actually understand what this theory means in regards to learning, instead of just kind of reproducing what the textbooks have said. We don't want to know more about the main principles of the learning theory. We want to know actually what this means for learning and how this helps one's learning. So you might give examples. So there's kind of two ways you can do it. First of all, you can give examples of practical things in the classroom that would show how this theory actually helps one learn, and how it can impact learning. But the other really important about analyzing, because analyzing is not just all the great things about it, or when we critically analyze something, it's actually looking at its limitations. And this is a really important thing, is when you analyze learning through this theory, you're looking at, because not all theories can answer all the questions about how we best learn. So the limitations of this theory is also an important part of that analysis.
So that might not necessarily just mean that you're criticizing it or pointing out its flaws. You're talking about it might be a theory that's perhaps relevant in certain situations. So you're sort of highlighting that. So when we're talking about limitations and being critical and critically analysing the theory, we're looking for you to sort of point out where it's obviously useful in practical learning in the classroom, but also about in which sort of, I suppose, examples or avenues where it might not be best suited.
Just some other kind of things to consider is that you need to include a list of references. A lot of people tend to put this on the back because they run out of room out of the front, so that's fine. So if you are using PowerPoint or something, you can just have another page, that's fine. Yeah. And if it was printed out, it would be on the back. Make sure 10% of your overall grade goes to referencing correctly and formatting, spelling, those sorts of things. So do have a look when we'll show you a little bit about the rubric, but do make sure that you have edited your work, and again, academic language and structures. So we'll just kind of quickly look through the rubric. Tim, would you like to discuss the rubric?
Yes, so certainly, as Melissa pointed out before, really sort of paying attention to the weightings against each of the criteria. So again, if you find that you've 3/4 of your posters dedicated to outlining the background of your theorist, and you only have a few sentences where you're analysing the learning theory, you can see there that you've put too much emphasis on the something that's worth 15% and not enough on that that's worth 40%. And similarly, if you spend all your time making this beautiful, wondrous visual representation, and sort of run out of time to devote to the other sections, you'll find that in essence is only worth 5%. So again, it's about balancing not just what appears in your poster, but also your time and research allocation.
Just to note, the other two criteria, actually I said 10%, it's actually 20% of your overall grade. 10% is the academic language. So you have things like, making sure that you're using the English language correctly by spelling, grammar, sentence structure, and so on. And a lot of times, there's a problem with not checking your work, and then others there's more things that we need to pay attention to, which is great because as soon as we kind of find out where there are some language issues, we can always and the rubric states there are people that you can meet with and discuss with to help kind of scaffold your learning in that area. The other sections, criterion 6, is academic literacy, and that's really looking at things like organization of ideas, formatting, and voice, and so on, making sure that it's appropriate for this particular genre of writing, which is an academic poster, which we will have worked on in week 3, and particularly referencing. So these are just some of the things that get you thinking about the academic poster. Of course, if you have questions, make sure to talk with your tutors, but come back to this video and hopefully that answers most of your questions.
And good luck, and we look forward to seeing your posters.